So here are the benefits for the seller. These are things that you're going to want to let them know about. You're going to want to emphasize this to help you get the deal under contract. So again, you're going to want to let them know, hey, just like with Amy, this is going to save your credit. You just tell them like, man, nothing is worse for your credit than a foreclosure. 7 years. I mean, even in bankruptcy, you can get rid of after 4 years. Those foreclosures crush you. And say, hey, like, as I make payments for you, it's going to increase your credit. They're going to see that you're making these payments every month. And then here's another big thing. A lot of times they'll be like, well, what if you stop paying the mortgage? Or if sometimes you might be paying them, some money on top every month. You might negotiate. They might have enough equity that you say, hey, I'll pay the bank and I'll pay you $200 a month. So they're like, well, what happens if you stop paying me? And you can say, listen, Amy, like, here's the nice thing is like, I am going to clean this place up for you. I've got a dumpster company. We're going to clear everything out. We're going to repair everything that's underneath all this stuff. We're going to fix the carpets. We're going to put nice paint and carpet. Tell them about the things you're going to do to the house. Like, I'm going to improve this kitchen. I'll add a bathroom here. I'm going to put a lot of money into this.
Welcome to Real Estate to Freedom, the podcast that helps you create the active life you've always wanted through passive income investments. Now, here are your hosts, Dr. Nate and Becky Lambert.
All right, welcome everyone. Tonight we're going to be talking about buying homes with other people's mortgages. I know it seems unbelievable, but you really can buy homes in this market at between 2 to 4% interest. I know it's shocking, but it's true. And you do that by taking over the existing mortgage in something called subject to. So tonight we're going to dive into subject to / seller financing. We'll show you all the details, how to get these properties, how to find them. And this is such a good strategy, especially in today's high interest rate world that we're in. This is a necessity because a lot of times with the higher interest rates, it's hard to make deals cash flow very well. But if you can take over someone's existing mortgage at 3%, suddenly it turns into a great deal. And oftentimes you can get these with very low down payments. You don't have to go through the bank lending process. You don't have to go, right? I mean, that's part of the joy of this strategy is you don't have to go through all that hassle. Instead of putting 20% down like you would for a regular rental property, you can put oftentimes 5% down. I've even had one property that they just said, I just want out. Just go ahead and take it off my hands. I only paid the title closing costs of like $1,500, and I got the house essentially with 1,500 down. So those are rare, but I mean the good news is like you can get houses all day long for like 10% or 5% down, you know? So we're gonna show you all the nuts and bolts of how to do that.
And here's the thing, like don't let like a lot of this vocabulary, like subject to, like what does that actually mean? We're going to get into it. Don't let the vocabulary of this, any of it, scare you. When we go through and do the explanations, it'll make sense. These are just this is what it's called: seller financing subject to, right? Subject to the mortgage.
That's right. All right. Let's start off. I always like starting off with the story. Let's start with Amy's story. So Amy, and this is, by the way, Amy's story is a true person that I bought her home. So Amy faced the risk of losing her home and everything she cared about. She was getting a notice of default, and that's a good source of leads. In fact, we'll on the course that we're going to do on finding deals, Edmund's going to show you how you can use some software called the Renatus iOS software to find, you can find a list of everyone who has a notice of default that the bank said, hey, we're going to foreclose on you. And those people are very motivated, as you can imagine, to find a solution. So in this case, Amy, she was going to lose everything she had, because she was 6 months behind on her mortgage. She didn't have another place to go. She didn't have any money to find a place to rent. Really bad situation. In fact, it was all because of her daughter's medical bills. Her daughter, and I mean, this can happen so easily, right? These doctors charge an arm and a leg, and in this case, she wasn't able to make the payments because of those escalating medical bills. And to make matters worse, she had a disorder that led to hoarding. That is a mental disorder, guys. And would you believe this house was so stacked up? This is a picture of the house. 4 feet of junk. In fact, I couldn't even access the kitchen, couldn't even get into most of the bedrooms. It was wild. I mean, I know it sounds sad, but there were actually 5 dead cats like under all the debris when we cleaned this thing out. It took 26 full-size dumpsters to clean out this place. So, a lot of stuff. And you can imagine why she was in a pickle. Like, who's gonna want to buy a house like that? Any retail seller's gonna like be like, whoa, I don't know what to do with this. I mean, it smelled bad. I mean, they said neighbors a block away said they could smell the stench as they cleaned this place out.
I've had one of those, and it was bad.
Yeah, and so she was in a difficult situation. She's like, "Hey, I can't seem to sell this," but she was gonna lose her good credit. I mean, she had already been damaged by having late payments, but when you get a foreclosure, guys, it stays on your record for 7 years. This is very, very debilitating. So she was gonna lose everything she owned to the bank. The bank would just be like, just sell the house out from under her. They have the right to do that. And then she wouldn't have a place to live. So in this situation, I had a friend in Renatus named Keith. He was part of my elite investor team. He knocked on the door. That's one of the finding strategies we're going to talk about. You can find lists of people like this and then go door knocking. And he set up an appointment for us to meet with Amy later on. What we did was we presented Amy with a solution. So what we told her, we said, Amy, we'll catch you up with the bank. It's like $15,000 to catch her up with the bank. And we said, and then we'll give you another $15,000 to go find a new place to live, right? Because again, you don't want the person who's you're buying the house from, you don't want them to stay there because they didn't pay the bank. They're probably not going to pay you either. And then you have to try and evict them, and it's just not fun, right? So instead, we give her $15,000 to go find a new place to live. And what I always recommend to people, I try to say, and here's the cool thing about these, we're going to talk about this in more detail, but you have the flexibility of, giving her half of what you promised initially. And then what I always do is give the other half of the $15,000 when she's moved out. And then I have a daily penalty, I might say, because I like to close these things fast. That's how I talked Amy into it. I'm like, hey, I can get money in your pocket like in 5 days. She's like, what? Yeah, 5 days. Let's close this thing in 5 days. And I'll have $7,500 to you in 5 days. That's like, oh man, that would feel so good. That would feel so amazing, right?
But she
So
was ready to lose everything. So like, $7,500 or 15,000 to be able to walk away 15,000, like that was a win for her.
huge win. And then, as soon as she was out, I gave her 30 days to find a new place. And then every day past 30 days, it would cost her a $200 penalty. So, and I'd take that out of the money that I hadn't yet given her. And it was all written in the contract, right? I'm like, hey, any day past 30, $200 per day penalty. That way we could close the deal quickly. I could get ownership. You don't want other investors or anyone else coming in to try and snag the deal. So, get it under contract, get it under your name, close with the title company. We'll go through all those details. And then you can give them the rest of the money. That way you have that leverage. And we're like, hey, we'll help you with everything. We got the dumpsters. The people in this situation, they don't want to have to deal with anything, right? They're in a very bad spot mentally most of the time, right? So we're like, hey, don't even worry about cleaning. Just grab whatever you want. Just snag anything that you want to hang on to, and then we'll just take care of everything else. So we went to the title company and she deeded the property to me and Keith so that we're on title, we're protected. And so now it's okay for us to go ahead and spend money on 26 dumpsters because we know what this house is worth when all is said and done. So, we're okay to spend that money once the property is on our name and on title. And then would make the payments directly to her bank. That's a mistake a lot of people make, guys, is like you don't want to pay Amy and then hope that she's going to pay the bank. She's already shown that she doesn't have a good pattern of paying the bank. So what you can do is you can work with an escrow company. I use escrow specialists, and the escrow specialists can go ahead and you will send the payment to escrow specialists and they'll send it to the bank. And then if you promised Amy some money over time, sometimes people will say, hey, I'll make payments to you. Like, especially if they're not in a desperate situation, if they just want to make some cash every month, you could have escrow specialists send some to the bank and then some to the seller.
How did you determine how you were going to give this seller 15,000? Like, was it just like an educated guess, thinking like how much this person was going to need to move out, knowing that they weren't going to get anything? How did you come up with that?
So what I did was, I essentially computed what I could sell it for, right? So you want to come in when you meet with the seller, you're going to come in with some comparable properties, and that will help them, you know, first of all, you want to say, hey, what do you think the property's worth? Because I had one guy, I bought his house or the house, he had bought it for 160. And when I asked him at that point, it was worth like almost, 280,000. But I said, hey, what do you think the house is worth? He's like, well, I bought it for 160. It's probably worth 160. I'm like, okay, we'll go with that.
What about the equity she had in the house? Didn't she want to recoup it? When you're behind on your mortgage payments like that, like the bank gets to keep all the equity. So she wasn't able to recoup any of the equity because she was several months behind on the mortgage. That equity is the bank's. That's why it's good that you guys have HELOCs, because if you're ever in that situation, you can utilize the equity in your home to make these payments for you, as opposed to being in a closed-ended mortgage, not having the money, and then you end up owing the bank and the bank could take your entire home. And she was too embarrassed to obviously have a real estate agent. A real estate agent wouldn't even deal with this home. They wouldn't even bother with this home because it's in such disarray.
Yep. And the other thing to note is that part of my configuration was to, first of all, determine what the value is, what I could sell it for. And then, I mean, then you start low, and then if you need to, you go up. And this was part of her equity that I was giving her, right, with the 15,000. Part of it was that I had to send another 15,000 to the bank, right? So as investors, we're taking on some risk. I mean, there could have been, thankfully, there wasn't anything super major under all the rubble, but there could have been some pretty serious issues with the house, right? So I'm taking on the risk. So you want to make sure that you're building in that profit margin. And we're going to show you in the lightning analysis section, we're going to do a workshop on how to analyze these properties using these quick formulas that I call lightning analysis, so that you can just quickly determine about what's the most you could offer and still make a 10% profit on the deal. So, you can run those numbers and then, hey, at this point, this is the most I can do and still like make it worth my time. So we'll show you how to run those numbers, and you can give them, if they want more of their equity, you can give them more money down. So it's everything's negotiable.
What's the purpose of the escrow company instead of just paying it yourself? Like, why do you have to use an escrow company?
You don't have to use an escrow company. I think the you can just pay directly, and I do that. I sometimes do that too. I would say we're gonna talk a little bit about what's called a seller finance sandwich. So that's probably the most common time when you would use an escrow company. Unless if you're making Amy monthly payments, it's just more convenient to send one payment to at the escrow company, then they pay the mortgage and Amy. But if you don't need to pay Amy, you could just make the payment yourself. But then one of the exit strategies, guys, with this formula with buying homes subject to is you can sell the house to someone else on subject to. So you can usually get like a 10% markup in the purchase price because, you know, you're offering non-bank financing. Anyone can qualify. And so if someone buys the home from you, they're going to be making payments. Essentially, you still have to pay the mortgage company, but then you want to get paid the difference, right? You're gonna sell it for a premium price, probably a premium interest rate. So you want that buyer that bought the house from you to send a check to the escrow company because then you know that they're going to take care of the mortgage and you know that they're going to send the remaining amount outside the mortgage to you. So you have a check just automatically deposited into your bank account every month. So that's especially when you're going to want to use the escrow company. Or like I say, if you're paying both the mortgage and the seller, those are the situations when you're going to use the escrow company. But here's the cool thing with Amy. I mean, I really helped Amy improve her credit score because it's like having those payments paid regularly over years is going to make her look great to the bank. Suddenly the bank's going to be like, "Oh, okay. You're good. We'll go ahead and pull that 30-day late or 90-day late off your thing you've been paying for 2 years." And here's the other cool thing is after a year of you making payments, Amy could go, her credit score is going to be better, and she could take the history of you making those payments on her behalf, and she could submit that to a lender, and it's not going to count against her debt to income ratio, which is really nice because some people are going to be worried, well, how can I ever buy a house again if this mortgage is still on my name? And you can just let them know, hey, after a year, I mean, it's going to take them at least a year to get their credit back to the point where they could qualify to buy a house, right? And to get back on their feet financially. But the other nice thing is after a year, it's not going to count against their debt to income ratio, and they should be fine to just qualify.
It's much better than 7 years, folks.
Oh, yeah. And the nice thing about this one, we were able to sell it for a $60,000 profit. We fixed it up, renovated it, and sold it. So the nice thing is we didn't have to, I mean, last week we talked about hard money lending, hard money loans. It's a great thing to have. The hard money loans are awesome, but they are expensive, right? You usually pay 2 origination points and 12% interest. If you can keep that, cheaper monthly mortgage in place, that's gonna save you a lot in terms of your money costs. So that's one of the advantages. And then if you hang on to it and keep it as a rental, then you've got that mortgage in place, that low interest rate for the long term. And that's gonna give you even a bigger benefit, right? With the rental. So, we split after all the, some of the closing costs and realtor fees, we had a net, gross of like 60,000 and then net of 50 that we split. So it was a win for everybody. That was you always love getting those big checks and helping someone out that really couldn't have done it, could not have done it on their own. How do you persuade the seller to stay on the mortgage for as long as possible? I just present this as the option.
Their only option. I mean, the only other option they're going to have is to lose their home, unless a family member, already find the money to pay the bank that they're behind on.
Yep. And now, if they're really stuck on this, and I will let them know what I was telling you about how after a year it doesn't hurt their debt to income ratio. But if they're really anxious to get off the loan, especially if you're going to flip the house, like we could have said, hey, we'll give you a balloon. We'll get you off the mortgage in a year. If your plan is to flip it, no problem, right? If you want to rent long term, maybe you could say, hey, we'll balloon, which means we'll just pay pay off the mortgage in 5 years, right? I mean, it's totally up to you what you negotiate with the seller. You want to go for as long as possible. And if you're wanting to keep it as a long-term rental and you want a longer term, then you might want to sweeten the pot a little bit and maybe offer them, a bigger down payment to get them to agree to staying on the mortgage for a longer period of time. So everything's negotiable. You just got to find out what's most important to them and how to speak the language. I was on the title, but she stayed on the mortgage, which essentially is what subject to is, right? They stay on the mortgage, they are on the hook. You're making the payment for them, but at the end of the day, if you screw up, it's going to hurt their credit, right? They're going to, but obviously if you buy the house, you're not going to want to screw up because if the bank forecloses on them, they foreclose on you as well. So you want to make sure that's why we use the escrow company. You don't want to ever send the money to the seller because you just want to make sure 'cause a seller might just say, oh, I'm just going to put this in my pocket,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you want to always make sure that the bank is being paid. I always get the credentials of the person's bank login. You can even like change it to your contact info. After you have all the login info, you can change it however you want. But I like having the login so that I can always see that I can double check that the bank's getting paid. It doesn't need to be, it depends on your goals. I mean, if you run the numbers, and the cash flow could be awesome with the property. Maybe you can run it as a short-term rental, and you can make $1,000 of cash flow every month. Then it doesn't matter if there's no equity in the property. I mean, you can gain the equity over time as you pay down the bank and as the market potentially appreciates. But if the cash flow is awesome, you could say, "Oh, that's okay." I actually had a friend of mine from college call me yesterday. He said, "Hey, this neighbor I know, they're going into default. They bought it at a high interest rate. It was just a year ago, so it doesn't have much equity. I'm like, run the rental numbers, but my guess was that in that situation, it just didn't make sense. Even if he could do this subject to, like if you don't have any cash flow or equity, then you gotta just pass on the deal, right? Like, because it's not gonna make sense unless you really desperately need a big tax write-off. But I'd recommend against that. You always want to have at least the equity or the cash flow, preferably both. So again, the seller says on the mortgage, but that they transfer it to you. And here's the nice thing, because you are officially on title, you technically get all the tax benefits. You have full control of the property. Even though the debt isn't in your name, it doesn't matter. You own the property. And people always ask me this, and someone might be thinking about it now, but what about the due on sale clause? So the due on sale clause is the clause that every bank, every mortgage has that says, hey, if someone transfers ownership, the bank has the right to call the note due. In other words, they can say, you got to pay this off if you just transferred ownership. So they might find out that you bought the house and they send a note to the seller that you bought it from and say, hey, we're going to call this note due. I'll tell you one thing, it almost never happens, and here's why. Because think about it, if you were a landlord and John was your tenant and Aunt Jemima was making the rent payment on behalf of John, would you really care that it was Aunt Jemima's money versus John's money? Probably not, right? It's like you're getting the money. Who cares where it's coming from? Now, most banks are going to think the same way. I had it happen once. I've done about 30 of these. One time, there was a specific bank that sometimes is known for doing this. It wasn't a national bank. It was like Utah Housing or something like that bank. And they did call the note due. And so what I had to do was I had to just refinance it. So there are some situations like that. So you want to make sure that you're in a spot where you can, you got to have some backup plans, but that almost never happens. But I always just want people to know that there is the risk, there is the chance that you might have to either sell it or refinance it into a different bank.
And they always give you time to do that. It's not like they say we want the money tomorrow or you got to refinance tomorrow. They know it takes time.
Yep. So these are the benefits for the seller or for the buyer, I mean. So this is for you guys as investors. So you can acquire an unlimited number of properties, guys, with financing already in place. Super, super duper powerful, guys, because with Fannie and Freddie loans, you can only get 10. And after 4, it gets really hard. People just don't, they don't want to, you got to have all this money in reserves, and they just make it harder because their risk goes up a little bit. So with subject to, you can acquire an unlimited number of properties.
Do you have to disclose to the bank the change of title? Also, what about insurance? Does that change that you have to provide the policy which banks want as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you don't have to disclose it. And by the way, this is totally legal. They even have seller financing addendum. Realtors in pretty much every state I'm aware of has an addendum that you can do this. So it's not like it's something shady, but you don't want to like alert the bank. It's like, you know, John doesn't bother telling you as the landlord that Aunt Jemima's paying the rent, but you just don't want to bring it to their attention. But if they happen to know, you can have, they usually won't even do anything about it. But in terms of the insurance, that is an important piece. Ideally, you want to call the you want to have the seller call the insurance company and add you as an additional insured on the policy, so that gives you that added protection. I usually don't even change the insurance. If I see that the insurance is a crappy company that charges crazy high rates, then I can change the insurance, but it's just added hassle. So I usually just leave it in place, but you want to add yourself as, an additional, as ideally the primary benefactor of the policy. And the other nice thing is you get the tax benefits because it's your property, right? And I already mentioned the hard money. You don't have to pay the hard money costs, the 2 to 3% origination fee and the 12% interest. You don't have to pay that, which is awesome, especially if you're planning to flip the property. And so you can rent the property, flip it, or like I mentioned to Nancy, you can sell it on seller finance terms and be in the middle. Sell it for a premium price, premium interest rate, and just collect the money in the middle. So here are the benefits for the seller. These are things that you're going to want to let them know about. You're going to want to emphasize this to help you get the deal under contract. So again, you're going to want to let them know, hey, just like with Amy, this is going to save your credit. You just tell them like, man, nothing is worse for your credit than a foreclosure. 7 years. I mean, even in bankruptcy, you can get rid of after 4 years. Those foreclosures crush you. And say, hey, like, as I make payments for you, it's going to increase your credit. They're going to see that you're making these payments every month. And then here's another big thing. A lot of times they'll be like, well, what if you stop paying the mortgage? Or if sometimes you might be paying them, some money on top every month. You might negotiate. They might have enough equity that you say, hey, I'll pay the bank and I'll pay you $200 a month. So they're like, well, what happens if you stop paying me? And you can say, listen, Amy, like, here's the nice thing is like, I am going to clean this place up for you. I've got a dumpster company. We're going to clear everything out. We're going to repair everything that's underneath all this stuff. We're going to fix the carpets. We're going to put nice paint carpet. Tell them about the things you're going to do to the house. Like, I'm going to improve this kitchen. I'll add a bathroom here. I'm going to put a lot of money into this. And guess what? If I stop making payments, you can foreclose on me and you get the property back and the property's all caught up. You get it. You get to keep the property with all that caught up, and it's improved now. I've put all this work into fixing it up, and now you get all those improvements. Because if I stop making payments, that's your right. It's in the contract. So, people like that. It gives people a lot of comfort knowing that that's what you can do. And, like I mentioned with Amy, we said, hey, we can close in 5 days. As a new investor, you're probably going to want to give yourself at least 14 days to come up with the money and figure everything out. But like when you get good at this, I mean, I've closed in as little as 4 hours, believe it or not. Like when I had someone that I really trusted, that I knew the condition was what he said it was. You only want to do this if the person you're buying it from, this was a wholesaler and I'd worked with him, so I knew he was solid and he was a friend of mine. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just drive over to the title company. These numbers look good. I'll just drive over and catch him up with the bank right now. So 4 hours later, I was signing the docs. Again, I wouldn't typically recommend that. And as a newer investor, I'd say, keep it 14 days of due diligence so you can find the down payment. It doesn't need to be your money. It can be someone else's money, private money, like we talked about last week. But the nice thing is you can close quickly. And then, like I mentioned, I've had pretty good success at being able to get people out with those by paying them only half of what I owe them initially, and then the other half once they're gone. That gives them a lot of motivation. So I always do that because you just want to close as fast as you can. And another big selling point to the sellers be like, hey, it's going to be hard to sell this, right? I mean, like, and start asking them questions like, hey, do you have the money to get a dumpster and workers to clear all this out? Do you have the money to fix the oven that's been buried for 5 years? You have the money to, and just run through all the expenses that you're gonna have to pay. Like, Amy, we're gonna have to replace the drywall on this. Like, do you have the capital to do that? Most of them don't, right? So it's like they know, and you just tell them, hey, if you try to sell this with a realtor, they're gonna need all that stuff done first before you list it on the market. Do you have
Sometimes you guys, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
No, that was it. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. So sometimes it's people are in denial when it comes to these type of properties. I've seen it time and time again where, I find out about the situation, I talk to them, and they're like, they say no, right? They're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. They're going to figure it out. And then a lot of the times it's not right until about a month before the house goes to auction, which is pretty much what the foreclosure is, that they then realize like, okay, they know that they have to do something. So for those of you that are marketing to anybody that's in these distressed situations, send the same marketing to these people every month, every single month, because a lot of the times they'll take, like I use these cards, right? It's this one's like avoid foreclosure. Don't let the bank take your home and destroy your credit. We can buy your home as is, commission free in under 30 days. These postcards will go out. I send these postcards to the same people over and over and over until they call me and say, hey man, like I'm done with your postcards. Take me off your list. Cause I can't tell you how many times I've sent that postcard out 15 times. And then finally on, the 16th time they'll call me and be like, okay, I am in some trouble. I keep getting your cards. How can you tell me about getting out of this?
Yep, that's right. It works, guys, because sometimes the key is to keep being persistent. Some of these guys, like Edmund said, are in denial. So it's like, and truthfully, I've actually been there myself. 3 years ago, my house was a disaster. I mean, I gained some appreciation. I just gone through a divorce. My former wife left the state. I had 5 kids I was trying to take care of. Like, I was a mess. So I understand now how these people can be in such a bad state because I was there. The key is to always help them realize like it's all about timing, right? Like if you can catch them when they get that letter from the bank saying you have 20 days left till the auction, suddenly they might be like, oh man, okay, I'm motivated. All right, where's that card or where's that that person left me a phone number. Where can I find him, right? So you just gotta sometimes keep being persistent. And if you're the one that's been following up with them, they're gonna tend to reach out to you because they remember you. So you just gotta, and we'll talk about that more in our finding deals section. But so in terms of convincing the seller, you always want to build that rapport. That is so important. You got to have that relationship of trust. You want to listen to them with empathy, help them feel like, man, this person, they understand, right? Like, start with kind of less intrusive questions. What do you like about this neighborhood? You know, oh, tell me about that picture on the wall. And then eventually you're gonna start to move into, hey, so just curious, like, I know it's got to be hard. Like, what happened? Like, I want to help you. Let me know what happened. Like, I want to be able to help you better, and just show them that empathy, and they're gonna feel your genuine concern, right? And that's what I love about this, guys. It truly is a win-win. I've helped so many people out of some really bad crap that they couldn't have gotten out of on their own.
And that's
And
all real estate is. You're a problem solver. You identify the problem, you offer the people a solution, and like Nate said, it's a win-win for both parties. Because believe it or not, there's not a lot of, I mean, like how many of you would see that house Nate just showed you and say, man, I want that house, right? Like that's the house I want to do for my first home. Well, those are the homes that I love because those are the homes that like, you're truly helping someone get a fresh start.
that's right. I mean, think about a lot of the average first-time home buyers that they're getting back from their honeymoon and they don't want to move into a hoarder house, right? So, and then, the other steps are mostly the points that we talked about in the previous slide, like just re-emphasize all these things that we've been talking about, how we're going to save their credit, stop the foreclosure, we'll get you cash fast, help your credit score, you'll get the house back if I ever miss payments, and these are, and then the last point that I haven't mentioned yet is you can even show them the state approved form. And even if they're at all suspicious, you could even say, hey, bring up Google and type in Pennsylvania, seller finance addendum. And they can see the form right there on Google, like that people do this, right? So I like to use those state approved forms because it gives people added confidence that you're not like trying to do some weird scammy thing,
Mm-hmm.
that this is an actual sale.
Because people are going to question this in the beginning. Like it is up to you to make sure that you're giving them the proper education that this is legit, that this does happen all the time. And showing a state approved form is one of those ways to where people will feel a little bit more confident about the sale of the home.
That's right. So, again, the traditional methods with the bank, you can only get 10 properties and it gets harder every time with every property, and there's mountains of paperwork. I hate filling out those things, man. Like that is right. I mean, it's almost like worth doing seller finance just to avoid
Yep.
the pain going through the rigmarole with these
Yep.
land. And again, with subject to, you can control the property without ever dealing with the bank at the low interest rate, right? It's huge. This is a way to get unlimited properties and make it a win for everyone, right? There's benefits to you and to the seller. And learning how to have these kinds of conversations like we've been talking about can put you on the path to financial independence. Because think about how many 50 or $100,000 paydays do you need to fire your boss, right? Replace your employer. Doesn't take, for a lot of people, so only a couple
Yep.
to replace that employer. So, and again, this is the kind of stuff, like, we love talking about this stuff on the deal room every week, because we want to show you how to structure these. We want to run you through each step and help you out.
Thanks for listening to Real Estate to Freedom with Dr. Nate and Becky Lambert. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can download their free ebooks and workshops by visiting realestatetoFreedom.com.